had revisited those clauses. So what I make that point because I'm saying it was an ongoing process. Even though it was supposed to be a final draft ready for signing, we were still finding things that we thought should be addressed. And so when the leader saw it, he with different eyes, he saw things which we had really overlooked. And I thought that his comments were very, very important, that they were significant, and that they ought to have been shared with the committee, and we could have looked at it before sending the report, the draft report to cabinet. But you see, there's a timetable which the government is following. Yeah. And their timetable does not accommodate the constant revision and improvement of the document. What they want is to follow the timetable and to at a particular time table the bill. The bill was originally supposed to have been tabled, from last year, May, as you know.
Yes.
It was supposed to be a 3-month window.
So I get the impression then that they're trying to rush this thing through.
Yes. I don't think I don't think that anybody can resile from that objective on their part. They're trying to rush it through.
You think it's that they're trying to catch the general election with the referendum?
I think that it would be unwise of any government to do a referendum close to an election. That is my view.
Because they want to do it before then.
Yes, but it's according to the timetable, which the section 49 of the Constitution requires. You cannot escape the window of a general election. Let me just explain. So the Constitution requires that the bill has to be tabled and lay on the table for 3 months before it is debated.
Yeah.
After it's debated, it has to lay on the table for another 3 months before it is passed, and then it is sent to the Senate. The Senate debates it, and it is sent back up to the House of Representatives, where the referendum has to be no less than 2 months and no more than 6 months. Dr. Barnett has worked out a schedule. At the time when he worked out the schedule, when it was expected that we would have signed off on the draft report from April, that schedule was to have the referendum by March. So now you're looking at having the referendum, say, April 2025. Elections are constitutionally due September 2025.
Yeah.
I know that if I were advising, if the PNP was a government and I was advising the PNP, I would tell them to approach such a decision with great caution. Because to have a referendum during an election year is a political risk, all because people, if you don't educate them, if you haven't done your groundwork and made them understand all the issues, they are going to be simply exercising a political will. If you see what I'm saying, Kamla.
Yes. But I'm looking at this thing with different eyes, different lenses. And I'm saying to myself, why would these people want to rush these things? What is in it that they're insisting to have changed? Is it that something, because as you say, it is risky to try and have this referendum so close to in the election window? But
I am not sure. The one that I was totally opposed to and spoke freely against was what I call the Andrew Holness doctrine, which is that whoever appoints a senator gets an opportunity to remove the senator. And that to me was very flawed because it did not preserve the independence of the Senate. And it did not answer the call which the people have made, which is for less powers to be vested in the political authority. We were actually strengthening the hands of political leaders if we gave them that right. And for example, if you had a state of emergency and a senator from the opposition decided to vote with the government, they would do so at risk because
yes.
they could be removed.
They could be removed.
You recall that Nigel Clark, when he was an opposition senator, voted with the then PNP government on an issue by giving his vote in the Senate.
I remember that.
And it is, and I believe when those undated resignation letters were signed, it was with that notion in mind that
they want to entrench this in the Constitution. No,
right, and eventually, that recommendation was watered down. In other words, it wasn't a clear recommendation that be so. I mean, when the report is made public, as I think it should be, then the views will become clear.
And it's only when we see this report we will kind of get an idea as to what are the same question you're asking as to what's a push in terms of for this to go through, because really and truly the whole nation is in the dark as to what is to come.
Yeah, I just believe that there are other things probably hidden that probably not being exposed as yet. As Senator Donna said, when Comrade Leader looked at it with fresh eyes, he saw things that he had issues with. So probably we just need to press for it to be reviewed and reviewed, because in my opinion, there must be a reason why they are so pressed on having this thing go through the system so quickly.
But Kamala, if you're boast about a 1-month consultation with something that is so important to the people of Jamaica, it means that time comes for you to really go. Because the country, a lot of persons aren't afraid with what's happening. And I don't think the government is deliberate about trying to make that happen. So it makes no sense.
I get the impression that they really don't want to, they don't really want to become a republic. Just listening to everything, I am getting the impression that when it goes to referendum, they would probably be happy if it failed.
Well, I think they are monarchists. That's my view. That has always been my view. That they are monarchists. That they like the association. The efforts that they're making to remain with the Privy Council, because at one stage it seemed as though they went to lobby the Privy Council, the British government, to allow Jamaicans who had matters at the Privy Council to not require a visa.
Yes.
It has always been more about resolving the issues which the public has with the Privy Council rather than liberating the people to have their own regional court.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's another thing that I heard. Can't remember where I heard it, but it was sometime in the conversation today somewhere, that the Privy Council has actually put barriers in place to make it harder for Jamaicans to access. They've basically put, what is it that they've done exactly?
Patrick, you want to take that?
We ask
the merit rule that the Privy Council has introduced.
All right.
That also, it has a name. It's the merit rule.
Yes, so it's a divide of merit rule that the Privy Council is exploring at this time, and they have really put it for consultation. And I think it's the 17th. Which is in this week, that I think the consultation should end, because what they're really trying to do with respect to this rule is normally you would have a right to appeal, but it is now, they are now kind of putting it through a filtered kind of process to say that if once you put in the paper, a single judge will look on it, determine that it might be devoid of merit, you would have to now present arguments on paper, which 3 judges will look at, and if they determine that it has no merit, then it doesn't really reach the court where you go and advocate for the client. What I see is that the Justice Minister has dealt with it very flippantly to say that, boy, if it don't have no merit, why you want to argue it? We should leave it alone, kind of chuckling, and saying with that. But it's really a matter of the rights of an individual to appeal, and that right is really being taken away by this rule.
Right. So I was about to say that.
The right is embedded in the Constitution. You have.
But that's a conundrum, no.
You have two ways. You can apply. You can get leave to apply, or you have an automatic right to appeal to the Privy Council, and that is what they're watering down our constitutional provisions, and we have no recourse.
You know, I think this is perhaps what the PNP needs to publicize, the fact that we will not have as much access to the Privy Council if this devoid of merit rule is passed.
And we already have challenges going there, and with these things coming in, it's in terms of it's really less and less Jamaicans will really be able to access. So it's a serious issue. I'm very disappointed with the stance of the government, and it's really a situation where the rights of the people are not being protected, because I can bet that there is not this consultation process which is taking place. I can bet that the government of Jamaica, which I think the Ministry of Justice should be spearheading, is not doing anything at all to do anything to protect that right.
Well, as Comrade Donna said, they are monarchists, and they don't really seem to care about the rights of the ordinary Jamaicans, as we've seen with SOEs, as we've seen with the whole COVID lockdown. So I'm not really surprised. This is par for the course with them. After all, we have taken them to Constitutional Court how many times? And won.
And I think if there's any time that we should really take the issue of the leaving the Privy Council seriously, is now when all of this is happening. We can, in terms of the Caribbean Court is there, and it will be easier to access, and we don't have all these issues that we have to be basically pondering and begging to be there to have our matters litigated as a final court.
And we have already made a significant and massive contribution to the funding of the court.
Yeah, we spend a whole heap of money every year.
Oh, okay, so we are actually funding the court already and not using it.
Yes.
So
they say that people can watch what takes place at the Privy Council. People can. The CCJ live streams all of its hearings. Not only that, but it will sit in any territory.
Right. I was about to say it will come to the jurisdiction.
Absolutely. It will come to the jurisdiction. And access to justice is one of the most significant things in the life of every citizen. Anyone should be encouraging that.
But come on, you know.
Yes, Commissioner, go ahead.
Some time ago, I said on your program that the JLP, it has never been the party which supports regionalism. And as Comrade Leader said today, this ceremonial image of, we are parties. Jamaica is a party to the RTC, the Revised Treaty of Shagaramas. Mm-hmm. So is it just a ceremonial post, or there's no intention to give or to provide adequate justice or adequate opportunity for justice for Jamaicans? Because it's really a financial issue for Jamaicans. Just imagine people trying to find money to go to the PC when they can't even find money to access local courts.
Exactly. So a follow-up question for you, Comrade Shari. How is it that the PNP now plans to sell this entire notion of supporting the CCG to the public at large? Because as Comrade Donna stated earlier, the longer these things go on and the more the government persists, the less the support gets, not just for the CCG, but for
Kamla, I am not
constitutional... Pardon me?
I am not hearing you, Kamla.
You're not hearing me?
No, I'm seeing, but I'm not hearing you.
I'm not sure why.
I'm hearing
you hearing me, Comrade Peterkin?
Yeah, man, I'm hearing you, so I don't...
I'm hearing you now. I was getting a call. My apologies.
Okay, no problem. All right. So I was asking you, how is it that the PNP now plans to basically gain more support from the public? Because as Comrade Donna had mentioned earlier, as these things go by with what the JLP is doing, after a while, the public, basically the support wanes. So are there any plans now to shore up the support for the CCJ? How do we plan to educate the population? Because I think that massive educational drive is needed so that people understand the issues.
I think the best person to answer that question is Comrade Motley. However, my suggestion is really for us to get into the schools and the communities, be at the bars with people, just explaining to them. Let it be a political, a legal education exercise across the length and breadth of the country. But that's what we have to do, because we can't, as I said earlier, we can't rely on a 1 month consultation to say that Jamaicans are now abreast of what the CRC is doing. And what
I am not even abreast, and I listen all the time.
So the party has to be deliberate about that consultation. Don't let it be we're informing comrades, but we should be informing Jamaicans.
Exactly.
And undecided, because persons are really interested. And if we leave it up to the JLP, nothing will happen in that regard. But I leave Comrade Motley to...
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I agree with what Sharian has said, that is a duty and a responsibility which we have. But as I told you when I just came on, this is my first TikTok live. Shari set up my TikTok account. Thank you, Shari.
Nice.
And I see where social media spaces like this can be used to educate and inform and get feedback. And certainly,
you have 250 people watching you now on TikTok alone, and we're also simultaneously streaming to YouTube. So,
and I think that one of the things that we need to do as a party is to understand where people go to get their information. So although we use the traditional methods of town halls and face-to-face consultations, we do have an opportunity to reach people over social media. And I that is what I would add to the menu of ideas that Comrade Shari just outlined.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I am a policy analyst by training, researcher by training. If you're going to move a country forward, it is imperative that you use evidence and you use data to guide your decisions. So for the JLP, as I said earlier, to be ignoring that 58% who they really want to see us move or have the CCJ as our final court of appeal. That's an important statistic for us to look at. Also, I think we should move away from the approach of, this top-down approach, where is what we believe the people want, or is, the timeline. So we think that Jamaicans are ready because we think that the 1 month consultation is enough for them to, understand what's happening. I think we should move away from that. So as Comrade Motley said, not the town halls, but the social media, having the discussions across the length and breadth of the country, the schools, the communities, it will change that narrative where, persons, Jamaicans feel as if they're not a part of the process and not the JLP think or believe where they should be at, in terms of whether or not they're ready for us to make this big move.
A question, the poll, who conducted this poll? Was it a part of the Don Anderson poll?
I can't remember if it was Don Anderson or Blue Dot. I don't remember.
Okay.
I remember the data, but I can't remember who the pollster was.
And how long ago the poll was done?
Last year.
It was a last year poll.
It was not like it was commissioned by a political party or anything like that.
Okay.
So that's what made it to me so interesting. Because I must tell you that I was surprised by, one, the level of awareness amongst people as to the CCJ, and the fact that they considered that it was important that it become the final court of appeal. And that is why the numbers have stuck in my head.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. All right. I am still going to continue to ask you about these 16 issues, Comrade Donna. Because believe me, I want to know. I don't know if anybody else wants to know, but what are some of the other issues?
Well, one that I found very fascinating was the issue of our indigenous people, because indeed we had not made any reference to them at all. And the reason why I was intrigued with what the party leader said is because our coat of arms actually depicts the Tainos.
Yes.
Holding up, I think, 5 pineapples and with a crocodile on. Yes. And yet we made no reference to them. We had no consideration for our indigenous people, which has been well established that they should be so recognized. Nor did we make any provision for the Maroons. No references. And the view has been advanced that any constitution which belongs to the people should also reflect the people. So that was the point. Another point which he made was that we have been discussing the whole issue of dual citizenship. And your listeners might recall that in 2007, the People's National Party challenged the qualifications of a number of members of parliament because
Darrell Vaz, Shaina Robinson, among those two.
Yes, sorry, Gregory Mayer.
Gregory Mayer at the time.
So since then, there has been a lot of discussion because a lot of people have US visas or green cards.
Right.
And so one of the things which came up was that the qualification to sit in our parliament is that you be a Commonwealth citizen. So that means that in 1962, when we were doing our independence constitution, the Commonwealth we were part of the Commonwealth. We were one people then, under one queen, under one queen. And so if you were you could come from Kenya and you could come to Jamaica, and if you lived here for 1 year, you would qualify to sit in our parliament. So one of the easiest things that we had to resolve was that we knew that we did not want that to be the qualification. In our discussion, what we recommended was that you should be a citizen of Jamaica. But in the report, it said that you must be permanently resident in Jamaica. And that, I know the intention behind that statement was that you should have a certain type of residency. In other words, you couldn't say have a house in Montego Bay, fly in and fly out, fly in just before the election and run to become a member of parliament. So you had to have some established residency. And we discussed whether it should be that you should be resident for 5 years, whatever. But the way that it was said in the report was that you needed to be a permanent resident of Jamaica. And he questioned what exactly did we mean by permanent? Did it mean that we had to be living here constantly? Did it mean that we couldn't spend 2 months in the US? And he questioned whether that was what we really wanted. Or we wanted residency, a different type of residency qualification. Because there's no real definition, legal definition of permanent residence.
Yes.
The law uses ordinary residence to define and to capture the intention. That was something that we had overlooked. I don't remember all of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
But there were matters which I considered that the committee should be put before the committee for the committee to determine whether or not they wanted to include them in the draft report, or they wanted to rethink their positions, because we have been rethinking our positions. Our positions have been evolving. even though we had a draft final report, the first final report is substantially different from this last form.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad you brought up the issue about the indigenous people and the Maroons, because I know that one particular matter of importance for the Maroons is their treaty. Has this new reform even looked at the Maroon Treaty at all?
Well, no, and I know that they had wanted to make a presentation to the committee, but I don't think they made one.
Because it is quite possible now that with their treaty now and them having sovereign rights to the lands, if there is a new constitution, probably that will change.
Well, certainly it should be up for discussion. We have had some eminent scholars who have written on it, some agreeing, some disagreeing. So the discussion should be had as to the impact of the treaty and whether it is binding. But you can't just dismiss it because it's real. Yes.
Yeah, that is true, because you see the interpretation of the treaty right now, as you say,